Good evening, everybody. Excellent. Thank you. My name is John Randy. I am the host of Off Ramp on KPCC. Thank you. You're too kind. Welcome to the Crawford Family Forum at the Moan Broadcast Center. This is a place we did not even imagine existing almost a dozen years ago when we first turned KPCC from an eclectic music station into KPCC, the news and information station. In 2000, we had a tiny staff. We were in cramped studios. We had something like 150,000 listeners, if that. The latest audience numbers, which we just got today, which I can share with you. Okay, from 150,000 listeners back in 2000, we now have 600,000 people listening every week. We rank number 21 in the market overall with a morning show that is frequently a morning show, a public radio morning show that is frequently in the top 20 here in Los Angeles. And we're the top-rated public radio station in Los Angeles. And then there's this forum. You know, our mission has always been to build bridges between the diverse communities of Southern California with high-quality news and information broadcast on the radio. But now we can actually bring people together in person and offer this forum as a convening space for everybody in the entire community, including tonight, when Women at Work honors the trailblazing producer Gale Anne Hurd, who will be interviewed by Sandra Tsing Loh. So we here at KPCC are now what Southern California Public Radio's president and CEO Bill Davis calls a centering institution, uniting people on the air, uniting them here in the forum, talking about the important issues like jobs, the economy, the environment, education, equality, the arts, high-quality movies and television products as well. None of this could have happened if we hadn't had a visionary board, leaders who actually met in each other's homes before 2000, who said that LA needs solid local news, and they came up with this way of doing it. It couldn't have happened either without our underwriters and without foundation support, and none of it could have happened without our donors, listeners who give $10 or $20 a month, or members of our leadership circle, or our major donors who give to us from their time and treasure because they believe that KPCC is doing great work and needs to continue to get better, to grow, to do even more. So thanks to all of them. Thank you tonight for coming and sharing this space with us. And now I'd like to introduce to you Sam Genoway from the Board of Directors of Women at Work. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Terrific, thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Very pleased and honored to be here this evening. My name is Sam Genoway. I'm one of the members of the Board of Directors. And on behalf of the Board of Directors, our advisory panel, and our benefactors circle, we'd like to thank you for joining us this evening for this very, very special event. Women at Work, as you may know, has been around for 32 years in Pasadena. It's a singularly unique organization that helps women and men try to find jobs, get themselves sustainable, learn new skills, and advance through their careers. We have more than 6,000 clients that visit us each year, and we try to get as many as we can employed. I'm a client there myself, so I'm very proud to be a part of Women at Work. I encourage you to come visit our facility in the near future to see some of the excellent work that we do. We'd also like to introduce tonight a new training program that we have called the training division of Women at Work. This is for you that own companies and that you'd like to get the best training possible for your employees. You can now hire Women at Work employees and clients to do the training in your own facility using the technology that we've been able to obtain over the years. So if you'd like to learn more about that, I encourage you to go out to the lobby where we have more information about that. But what we're doing here tonight, I think, is really one of the coolest things that you can do, and that's to honor somebody who has really given a lot back to the community, who has been a very big success and a big inspiration to many, many, many people. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is to bring her on up because we've got lots and lots of awards for you. Gale Anne Hurd. We'll do our best not to trip over your water. Nice to meet you. Well, we thank you very much for being the Trailblazer Award winner this evening. But before we get to the Trailblazer Awards, the entire United States government and the state government of California has stopped its work just for you. So let me go through these for you, and you will. Oh, in many ways, it's probably a good thing. The first award that I'd like to present to you is from Congressman Adam Schiff, our congressman that's been very, very helpful to Women at Work in getting us grant money so we can continue our mission, and Adam Schiff is also rewarding you. State of California has gotten involved in this as well. The State Senate has also given you an award. And what would the Senate be without the Assembly? The State Assembly has also given you an award. Anthony Ortine.
But I have to work a lot harder to get one from Pasadena, right?
But you're going to get the most important award of all. That is the Trailblazer Award being honored for you this evening from Women at Work because of all of the good work that you have done. So let me have you. And before I depart, I want to go ahead and let you know what is on this for this plaque, and that is the award recognizes a professional who demonstrates outstanding personal achievement in her field and enhances the visibility of professional women while serving as a role model for others. Gale Anne Hurd, we are very pleased to award you this honor.
Thank you.
And we'll go ahead and hang on to that for you because you're going to be having to concentrate here in a couple of moments. And we're going to have you concentrate because we're going to next introduce your co-host on this, the person who's going to be interviewing you, and that would be. Got to get my notes straight here, you guys. Give me a second here. Sandra Tsing Loh. Here's her quick biography as it was given to me earlier today. She has shows. She is a playwright. She is on KPCC. She has a show called The Low Life. That's pretty clever. And The Loh Down on the Scene. That's pretty clever. But possibly most. Pardon me?
Low Down on Science.
It's Low Down on Science. Sorry about that. And is also a classical composer as well. And she'll be chatting with you. So on behalf once again of Women at Work Board of Directors, I'd like to bring up Sandra and let Sandra take over the rest of the show. Thank you. Thank you.
So much.
Thank you. You guys go ahead and sit. You've got your little microphones there. Yes.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And we're here. I guess I got too carried away reading about Gale Anne Hurd's reviewing all your action movies, and I go, I'm going to wear a black leather trench coat, and I feel so out of place. But it was an homage. Actually, I should have worn a little blazer, but it's an homage to you. I go, yeah! And now I feel in my kick-a-boots wrong, but that's okay. But I'm very excited to be here. Welcome. So I thought we would do, I've got 10 questions for you,
Okay.
Gale Anne Hurd. I'm going to try to do my James Lipton inside the actor's studio type of thing. And okay, let's see how it goes. Well, your movies include such blockbusters as The Terminator, Aliens, Abyss. Now you're helming The Walking Dead on AMC, which is the most watched dramatic series in cable history. I mean, that's pretty amazing. So now when I lean forward like James Lipton go, so Gale Anne Hurd, you like monster movies, do you?
I do.
Yes, all right.
Yes.
So why?
Well, I grew up on monster movies, on comic books, on science fiction.
Monster movie you remember of the time that you...
A particular monster movie?
Yes, that was inspired.
Well, I liked Them.
Oh.
I liked It Came from Outer Space.
Oh.
The Quatermass Experiment. I loved The Blob.
Oh, sure. Who didn't?
You know, very highbrow taste.
Yes,
what can I say?
very highbrow. And comic books?
Yes.
You're reading, what comic books did you follow?
The Incredible Hulk.
Ah.
Yeah, that explains a lot.
Yes. The two movies, two Hulk movies.
And I liked, I was a Marvel girl, so I liked Fantastic Four.
Ah.
And those were my favorites.
So that's what you were like as a child. If we were going to picture you in like, are you doing kind of a pre-Sarah Connor? You're jumping around with a gun and you're
I was
in a
a
fake gun.
total klutz.
You were a klutz.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's why I identified with Bruce Banner from The Incredible Hulk.
Okay.
Because he was the cliched geeky scientist.
Right.
Because you're not geeky at all.
Oh my
And you're-
God, are you kidding me?
But
yeah.
I was really not known for my athletic skills. I did develop them though, and I attribute that entirely to Bruce Banner and the Hulk. Because I was able to connect with my inner Hulk.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a lot to ruminate over. It's a lot to picture. And then, okay. So that's how you started. And I mean, I just, to get a little bit more of a picture of the young Gale Anne Hurd, were you the type of kid with a flashlight under the
Oh yeah,
blanket at night?
absolutely. Are you kidding?
Okay.
Didn't everybody have a flashlight under the
Flashlight
covers
under
at
the
night?
bed. Now it's with a Kindle. Now they can do it with a Kindle.
Yeah, gosh, now with
Yeah.
an iPad, you don't need one because
Yeah.
it lights up on its own.
But to go back, just for a moment to probe the childhood thing, but did anything really scare? I mean, so you weren't easily
Everything
scared.
scared me.
So
Are you
everything
kidding
scared
me?
you. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I loved it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I used to go to the drive-ins. Do you guys all remember drive-in movies? I love the drive-ins. I mean, like, I Spit on Your Grave. I think that was a really fun. I love that, And actually, the first time I saw a Roger Corman film, he did these Poe series. The Tomb of Lygia,
Yes.
Pit and the Pendulum. Those really scared me.
Oh, my goodness. But maybe there's something like in a drive-in movie theater where...
I went to watch the movies.
No, I know. I wasn't going there. That comes later. That's question 7. No. Of watching something scary with a big group that is somehow cathartic as opposed to alone. I remember actually when I saw Jaws for the first time
my God.
at the Malibu Cinema Theater. Oh my God, in the 70s, we didn't know what it was. And it's kind of like the first time, like the whole, and we didn't know what was coming. And I remember also seeing Alien the first, and we didn't know, nobody knew what that movie was. And just to see all these people in a room do it at the same time is maybe different than watching it alone.
Oh yeah, it was really fun. I mean, I found my people. If I was wearing a lower shirt, you would see me wear my nerd necklace because, as you know, it's now cool to be a nerd and it's cool to be a geek, and it really wasn't back then. No, you had to hide it.
Right. Okay. So you talked a little bit about, since we have a sort of a science interest between us, at some point, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
When I applied to college, I said I was going to be a marine biologist who wrote poetry. Yeah.
And
I
how'd that
don't
work
do
out for
either.
you? No. How did you come up with that?
Yeah, because I thought it would help me get into college.
Really?
No. I really did want to be a marine biologist.
Was it Jacques Cousteau?
It was. It was actually, I love Jacques Cousteau.
Weirdly, because I'm in a scramble, because I have a sleep-deprived mother, I recently interviewed Queen Latifah, and she also wanted to be a marine biologist. And so you and Queen Latifah could have been on a boat out there making something very interesting. But Jacques Cousteau, a lot of people cite him still. And
This, back to pop culture, Lloyd Bridges and Sea Hunt.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. And the poetry part was just...
I figured that, I remember the essay question that I had to fill out, and I realized how shallow I was. And I thought that people would be impressed by a poetry writing marine biologist.
Well, they would be. They might be. Even though this goes off my carefully balanced series of questions, I'm interested in the marine biologist thing and the nerd thing, because actually one of my favorite movies of all time is The Abyss, which is it's such a big, wild, woolly, scrambling movie, but there's that mixture of all that technology in there and that gadgetry. And I know one of your ex-husbands, James Cameron, is really into the technical and do you share that? I mean, is that part of how does movie making and science and nerddom and marine biology and monsters and the deep
There you go.
and hang on to your pantyhose
you mix
and
them
letting
all
your
up.
spouse, your ex, go down kind of like thousands of feet below,
Yeah, and you mix it all up and you get the abyss, and then a great movie up until you get to the psychedelic spaceship at the end, which
that was not your
no,
well,
we had some discussions, some heated discussions about that, because I said we really should do it at night, because back in the day, we could have made the spaceship look really cool, but in the daytime, it just didn't.
Really? That underwater Atlantis?
No, the underwater part I think was cool.
Right.
But at the end, the ship comes to the surface.
Oh, the psychedelics. Right,
yeah.
right.
And
That
it looks
right.
like sort of a VW van that someone took one of those airbrushes to. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's you lost that one. You
I
lost
did.
that one. But I didn't know. I thought it was a very cool movie. But I guess movie making. But does a technical side of movie making interest
There
you?
is. Yeah.
Does that interest you?
Well, in so much as it serves the character and the story.
Right.
Something very sad this year. This year is the last year that a film camera was made. R.I.P. film cameras. I mean, I'm talking about 35 millimeter feature film movie cameras. The last ones were made. So that date, 2011, will go down as the end of the film camera. But I'm also I go back and forth between being, someone who's an early adopter of technology and a complete Luddite. The TV show, The Walking Dead, we shoot it on Super 16 millimeter, and we love the way it looks.
Yeah.
So I think that technology is a tool to achieve something, and there's not always one best technology.
Right. All right. Well, then, tracking forward a little bit beyond childhood, so you end up going, if I got this right, to Stanford, and you majored in economics and communications.
Yes.
Why?
Because I couldn't compete with the pre-meds.
Okay, good answer. Fair answer. So you just sloughed it off at Stanford in economics and communications, and then you go from there to working for Roger Corman. That's quite a shift.
There was a bit more. There was a little bit more.
Okay.
I mean, I was studying economics, and I thought it was really strange. Maybe it explains why we're in the situation we're in. With the U.S. economy, because all of the economists I studied under kept giving you things like, given full employment and a stable equilibrium, which of course we don't ever have those conditions, and we did all of our economic models based on that. It was really kind of disheartening, because I realized I couldn't put that to use anywhere. And my junior year, I went to a foreign study program that Stanford had at their campus in England. It's no longer their campus in England, but it was the Cliveden House, which was the Astor Estate. Those of you who are English history buffs, it's where the Profumo affair occurred that brought down a government. We, unfortunately, there was no cavorting with sort of the, not that I would have been cavorting with prostitutes, but perhaps the men who were there anyway was Christine Keeler and Mandy Rice Davies were famous for their trysts at Cliveden. But there was an intensive program in British economics, classes at the London School of Economics, and at Oxford, as well as British Film and Broadcasting.
Oh.
So it was there that I started taking classes in film and broadcasting, and decided to add that to my major.
Film and broadcasting. And what would the courses be like then in film and broadcasting, given that it seems to change every 3 years? What's going on? Like, what were you first learning there, do you recall? That was
We were being taught by Anthony Smith, who at the time was the head of the British Film Institute, and we were taught British documentary by Basil Wright, who was one of the founders of the documentary medium, along with John Grierson from the National Film Board of Canada. And we had lectures like Sir Michael Balkin from Ealing Studios. It was the only time I interacted with people who were actually making movies, as opposed to talking about making movies.
Right, right. So then, how do you get from there to Roger Corman? And do you remember meeting him for the first time and what that was like?
Yes. I had to finish my degree in a year and a half, which meant I had to take a lot of classes in that department. And I took 3 courses from the same professor, a gentleman by the name of Stephen Kovacs. And Stephen was hired away from Stanford to go to work for Roger Corman. And I guess he remembered me because I was pretty ubiquitous in 3 courses in 1 year. So I got a letter in the mail after I graduated saying, Roger Corman is looking for an assistant. Will you come down for an interview? So I'm probably the only person in the history of film actually recruited.
Yes, I think that's safe to say. And what was that interview like? Back
in the day, and this was 1978, now looking back on it, antediluvian times, I thought that he was going to ask me how fast I typed, whether I took shorthand. I mean, that's, how good I was with the IBM Selectrix typewriter and what my phone manner was like. Right. So I went in having practiced all of those things. I was practicing my shorthand, okay?
Wow.
I don't think that my daughter has ever heard of shorthand. And I went in, and Roger was the one person in 1978 that a woman could interview for. And instead of asking me, thinking I was going to be a career assistant, asked me what kind of career I wanted to pursue. And I didn't really have an answer to that because I hadn't thought about it. I didn't expect it. But I thought, okay, I've got an economics degree, I've got a communications degree. He's a producer. And I said, I want to be a producer, Roger. And he said, great, you've come to the right place. And I thought, wow, that went really well. And then I didn't hear from him for 3 months. So I assumed I didn't get the job. But as it turned out, the previous assistant decided not to leave for 3 months. So 3 months later, I got a phone call, and he said, Gale, it's Roger. Can you start on Monday? And I was living in Northern California at the time, but I knew what the answer needed to be, and it was yes. So I moved down that weekend and started working for Roger.
Well, when you said he was the only man at the time that would have asked that question.
Oh, yeah.
What do you mean by that?
If you go back and try to look at the number of women who were producing films or were executives in feature films, you could probably count them on one hand. And many of those women started their careers with Roger Corman. So I didn't realize that because we didn't have the internet.
Well, shorthand took a lot of time at that.
Yeah, but because I didn't realize that it was essentially, that I really lucked out. Roger never once treated any of the women who worked for him as if they were, he treated them all as if they were equal to men, and in many cases superior to men because we worked harder for less money. And if working for Roger Corman, that was very important. We were loyal, we worked hard, and we didn't have to be paid very much. But on the other hand, what you got in the bargain was that you got incredible responsibility from the very first day you started.
And you were in, I want to say, marketing and publicity.
Well, I started as his assistant.
Right.
And that meant everything from looking at rough cuts of films and giving notes to directors.
Really?
Yes, in my first week. Those were
How'd
not
that go for
notes
you?
that anyone appreciated.
Do you recall a note that
Oh
you
God!
gave?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's so embarrassing, but we're all friends.
It's public radio. That's what we came here to do.
Exactly. So one of the things I said was, you know, I can't understand the dialogue here, and it was because there was a scene and there was a large Ritter fan, and I didn't realize that you did ADR and you did the sound after the fact. So it was pretty embarrassing when the director said, "What do you mean by this?" He said, "We haven't mixed the sound yet." Yeah, they didn't teach us that at Stanford. We did documentaries at Stanford,
Sure.
and you didn't go back and fix the ADR on the true life subjects you were interviewing.
Any other notes you recall that you would share with us?
No, that was the most humiliating.
Okay. Well, so that's very interesting. And I think so. But do you recall then for yourself just maybe a turning point moment? I'm sure there were many, or a milestone moment where you suddenly began to gain traction and find your way. And what was it?
Well, as you had already brought up, and then I interrupted you, Roger one day came into the office and said, "So Gale, you never wanted to hear those words?" Because "so Gale" meant that you were about to be clobbered with something. Either it was, something that required you to stay up for 4 days straight to complete, and you also knew that the answer had to be yes. So he came in and he said, "So Gale, the marketing department," which were two brothers and an assistant, they have to leave. They've had a family emergency, and I'd like you to be the marketing department starting on Monday. And in a cost-cutting measure, I maintained my $180 a week salary that never changed the entire time I was working for Roger.
Which was over a period of several years.
Yes. And I went from a 2-person with an assistant department to a 1-person department. And we were releasing between 3 and 6 movies a week, and I had to do all of that work myself.
Oh my God. 3 to 6 movies a week?
Excuse me, sorry, a month, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's still ridiculous.
Little problem with the math here. Yeah,
it's
but
still ridiculous.
But what we would do, sometimes a movie would come out and it wouldn't open, so we'd retitle it. And it would come out that it would be in theaters the next week under a different title. I think there was one, it was The Lady in Red. The next week it was Gun, Sin, and Bathtub Gin. So maybe that's why I felt like it was 3 to 6 movies a week, because
they're being
kind of
re-released
was
constantly. And did you come up with any of these titles? Did you, or did he? Was he just the guy that did?
He would say, he would ask us to do title testing. So his offices in Brentwood were very close to Uni High School, and so what we would do is, many of his assistants, we looked young enough to be high school students. So we'd go infiltrate the campus, and we would ask students which titles they liked best. And then we started to catch on that sometimes those titles were the worst possible titles. So we'd fake the results.
Oh.
Yeah. So I learned an early lesson in Hollywood. No, there was one called Beneath the Darkness. Now, what does that mean? But they always went for Beneath the Darkness. And then you'd ask them, we realized, well, let's ask someone 10 minutes later if they remember the title they picked. And no one after 10 minutes could remember Beneath the Darkness. So we figured that was probably not a good sign.
Oh.
And we also came up with ideas for movies by testing concepts.
Okay.
And now that's what the major studios do.
Oh, so in high school, you would test the concepts? How would you do that?
We would say,
In
would you
casual
be interested
conversation.
in seeing a movie about a giant piranha, or a piranha that lives in the salt water and flies? That was Jim Cameron's first film, Piranha 2, The Spawning. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I just always get stuck on the tiny details of how do you pose as a high school student and ask this question? Would you be interested in seeing a... How do you... Clearly you did.
Well, I mean, the high school students knew that we weren't high school students.
Oh, okay, right.
But the faculty didn't.
It's good to know. And one other thing, because at what, when Roger does the So Gale, you start on Monday. Is it on Friday that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
What time on Friday?
It was generally close to the time that I'd be going home.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Nice. And then just that's very funny. Okay. All right. So that's when the turning point came. Oh, that you were in marketing. And what are some things, I'm wondering, that you learned along the way in Hollywood that led to your success? I read in some interview somewhere you used the phrase to dress professionally. Does that, very professional, it's kind of and I wore the trench coat.
Okay, that's actually a story that I didn't really dress all that professionally when I worked for Roger Corman because we couldn't afford to.
Right.
But when I was making Aliens, which is the third film that I produced, I was in England, and I assumed, wrongly, because there was a woman prime minister, Margaret Thatcher, that the British were a lot more enlightened about women in positions of responsibility. Well, they were very enlightened about Margaret Thatcher in a position of responsibility, and not anybody else. So I remember Jim wanted me to meet possible department heads before he did and do a pre-screening process. So people would come in, and honestly, I felt like I was, that they were looking for Oz behind the curtain, because they'd come in and they'd sit down, and they'd look around, and I'd sit down, and I'd say, so, and they'd say, well, why are we starting now? And I'd say, I'm producing the film, and they'd say, yeah, no, who's really producing the film? And some of them basically said, well, when the person that is making the decision, who has the actual authority, comes into the room, then we can start the meeting. And I would stand up, shake their hand, say, thank you very much for coming in, and, we're moving on. And that honestly took them by complete surprise. But I was really lucky because the head of Fox in the UK at the time, a gentleman by the name of Tim Hampton, he would immediately get the phone call saying, Tim, I met this woman. I mean, well, she's a girl, really, and she's a Yank on top of that. And she said she's producing Aliens. And Tim would say, she is. Well, no. Who's really producing Aliens? She's married to the director. And Tim would say, she's really producing Aliens. Why? What happened? Well, I told her I wouldn't start the meeting until the person who was hiring me came in. He said, well, I guess you won't be working on Aliens then. So that happened a few times. But that's when I realized that dressing like I did for Roger Corman was really not a good idea in the UK. So I started dressing, like Margaret Thatcher.
So in a way, getting your start with Roger Corman was a great way to start, but then you had to either unlearn or relearn stuff after that experience because he was so nuts. So I think you have another quote where you were saying that you're still surprised, perhaps even to this day, how men can be intimidated by strong, talented women. Do you still hold to that? Yeah.
It's not a blanket generalization. But it certainly can be the case. I find that it's much less so now. But even on the show that I'm doing now, I will get myself into a lot of trouble here.
Good.
Yeah. But there's a project that I've been working on within the last year where we had a stunt coordinator who insisted on doubling the lead actress because he said that there wasn't a stunt woman who could flip the car. I wasn't on set, which is why I tend to be on set a lot, because those things don't happen when I'm on set. I mean, that is so antiquated. It's probably been, 25 years since that was true. So after the fact, I took him aside, this was days later, and said, I'd like to introduce you to a couple of very talented stunt women who drive and flip cars a lot better than you do, and look much better in a dress.
And how did that go? Well, now you're
I won't be working with him again.
Right, and you didn't even have to dress like Margaret Thatcher or anyone to make that decision.
No, I didn't.
Well, that's interesting, and I think also because you've been married to Brian De Palma and also James Cameron, and to a certain extent, these are kind of larger than life figures. These are not quiet, reserved.
They are not intimidated by strong women.
Right. So that's kind of like the match there. That they are not right, and so that's how that balance works. But is there sort of a balance as a strong woman, kind of either married to or working together with a strong man? Is there some balance that will both the men and women try to do, or how would that work?
Each time you collaborate with someone, it's a different dynamic.
Right.
People have different skill sets, and they need to be complementary.
Right.
Sometimes I have to be bad cop. Sometimes I can be good cop and bad cop in the same conversation.
Right.
And other times I need to be good cop. Other times, as a producer, you need to be cheerleader. You have to be godmother. Sometimes you have to be people's conscience. And sometimes you just have to say no.
That's a lot of hats, and right, and I think, do you think a man-woman can do it in a similar way? I mean, certainly I know from my side of the world in the magazine business and the writing business that people say if a woman is tough, then she gets much more blowback than if a man is tough, and that's something you experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember my dear friend Dawn Steele. They called her the Queen of Mean and things like that. It was unbelievable because she was certainly no different from a guy, and that was expected from a guy. But if she said anything critical, she was held to a completely different standard.
Well, do you have any sense of why that's still so?
I think it's less so now,
right.
But it's certainly, a woman producer would never get away with some of the behavior I've observed in very well-respected male producers, in which they are admired for being so tough. Women still aren't admired for that.
Do you think stars, like actors, can get away with a little bit more odd behavior because they're the star and they're, if they throw a chair, then they'll do a really great take the next time? Or...
There's starting to be blowback for that as well. You can do it as long as your box office. You can do pretty much anything as long as your box office. If you're not, and ultimately that happens to everybody, then then you're really cold for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I think this difference between women and men, it makes me think a little bit of the last presidential election of Obama and Hillary and the back and forth between them, and I always have been following Hillary Clinton's career for so long. Hillary, how whenever we'll see a first woman president of the United States, how they'll have to roll with all that's going to be really interesting. And that actually, I know that you've been on the Hollywood. Let me get the phrase exactly right. The Hollywood Women's Political Committee. You've done some associated with.
But that folded quite a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. But do you think that Hollywood women can have some influence in politics and power?
Yeah, absolutely. For the longest time, Barbra Streisand and Marilyn Bergman.
Right.
And, and Dawn Steele was part of that. And I am a supporter of an organization called Emily's List.
Right.
Early money is like yeast. that donates to women's political campaigns.
Right, right. And also you've done some mentoring of women coming up in the film industry as well, and you do that. And what do you think? Are there still the similar lessons that you're kind of imparting to them as would have been the same as you were coming up in the 70s, or is it a little different?
You know, it is a different. It's a different world. The one thing though is that you have to be prepared. You have to do your homework.
Right.
And I was listening to my friend Pat Morrison's show. I think it was yesterday, talking about self-esteem and how it's been a real disservice when people are told you actually don't have to achieve anything to get an award, and you don't have to work really hard, and you don't even have to try, and you should be told how wonderful you are. And there are products of that kind of self-esteem boosting encouragement who come in and honestly believe that they're entitled to things. And it's not women, it's men as well.
Right.
And you've learned that that's just not the case. It's certainly not the case in a recession.
Right, absolutely. Now, you have a daughter who is away and off in college, so good for you. Raising her as a daughter in these times, are these some of the similar lessons that you may have imparted to her? Like you didn't overinflate her self-esteem too much, or
I don't know. There are people here who know my daughter really well, and her parents of her friends. I think they could comment. You don't want to destroy your child's dreams, but you also want to be realistic and encouraging. But, it's also, by the way, my daughter's the reason I moved to Pasadena. Because I was living on the west side. Most of the industry is on the west side. And I didn't want her to grow up on the west side.
How come?
Because it really is an industry town, and the schools are industry schools, and very rarefied. And I didn't think it was, it really wasn't real life. And I wanted her to grow up in an environment where, the students didn't come to class in the mornings knowing the grosses and knowing the television ratings, and essentially your rank in the pecking order of the school was dependent on whether your parents were doing well or not, and I really didn't want where you were told for the school auction that you needed to hook a $125,000 donation. I've listened to you talk about this.
Yeah.
About getting kids into school and how people plan before they're pregnant.
There's absolutely that. But I think also that, and I know that we puzzle with it sometimes kind of in the magazine world, is that sometimes the interns one gets, if they are too verified or went to too fancy a college, it's kind of like, I'm showing up at work at 8, that's too early, or I'll come in at 11, and then it's kind of like, and I want to sit in on a meeting. We used to kind of at Buzz magazine many years ago brainstorm, and I'm going to brainstorm the cover, but no, actually you're 23 and your job is to get us coffee, and get us all the right coffee, and when you're 42 and old and haggard like me, you can decide it goes on the cover, but you actually have to work your way up. So they're just having a work ethic of that's really important, and when you start working it, when you worked with, you don't start brainstorming the cover, you start getting coffee.
No, you know what I was doing? One of the other jobs that we didn't talk about? I emptied chemical toilets in motorhomes working on Roger Corman's movies.
Oh, my.
Yeah. And that, by the way, was after I was head of the marketing department.
But were you still getting $180 a week, though?
I was getting $180 a week.
Right,
but you know what?
So good.
It was the best possible education because, it wasn't a transferable skill set. If you knew how to run marketing, it didn't mean at all that you knew your way around a set. So I started at the bottom, and whatever needed to be done. If you were low man on the totem pole, you did whatever needed to be done. And if you were good enough, you didn't have to do it again. So the next movie you had more responsibility. So when people come in and say, I'd like to work at your company, but I won't file, I won't photocopy, I don't get coffee, I'd say, and you won't be working here either. And it's really kind of a surprise that somehow, honestly, people come in and say, next year I want to be you. Good. Good luck with that.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know sometimes.
And I'll probably be working for that person someday.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it may be partly, also the colleges that we, like film colleges and writing schools, where people are kind of maybe over-prepped to be brainstorming, and sometimes we hate to release them back out into the world. And I've taught it like scripts in USC, and kind of like go, oh, this beautiful bubble that we're in right now, brainstorming, and we'll release you to the world where, you'll have to do chemical toilets or something similar.
Yeah,
like
but it's a
that.
good skill to have in the coming zombie apocalypse.
Oh, sure. Good to know. And I think also, but going back to your daughter, did having a daughter kind of like change a little bit of the way that you thought about producing? I don't know that you'd said when doing producing Clock Stoppers, for instance, where you go, I actually maybe want to produce a movie that I can take my daughter to see.
Yes.
And
so I did one.
Yeah. So. And then you said, I'm
Then
not
I
going to...
got over it.
Yeah, and then you got over it, and you said,
Yeah.
I'm going to make the movies that I'm interested in making and let her see it.
And then it was really fun because in the TV series, I actually got to, she got to play a zombie and get shot in the head and in the finale, the season finale
Right.
last year. And boy, that was really cool.
So she's into the monster genre.
Yeah, she liked doing it once.
Once,
She doesn't want to do it
exactly.
again. Yeah.
And I had read also, just also, I guess, still the notion that women can produce and write monster movies. I had seen a clip of something you'd done at Comic-Con of Girls Gone Genre.
Yes.
A panel. Can you talk a little bit about Girls Gone Genre?
It's funny because I'm on Twitter. And clearly, I've got way too much time on my hands because I actually read my timeline. And I was reading something that said that women who are fans of genre are as rare as unicorns. And I thought that was really shocking because I know lots of women who love genre. And I mean, Cheryl, our daughters and all of their friends like genre. They can't be mutants. I don't know, maybe. And I think it's sort of a generalization that somehow girls should like soft, fuzzy, warm chick flicks.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But when you actually look at the statistics, that's not true. The Friday night business for slasher films, shockingly, is at least 50% and sometimes more female teenage audience.
Interesting.
So what we have these ideas that are not proven that we think are reality and they're actually not. But then again, we've got politicians now who say, who cares about facts, who cares about science, we'll just make it up.
That's also true. And by genre, you mean, aside from the romantic vampire genre. So do you consider, like, by genre, like, slasher movies?
Well, I mean,
really
no.
something-
I mean, genre is anything that's in the, to me, fantasy, sci-fi, horror. Yeah,
Right.
that to me is genre.
Right.
Comic
Interesting.
book.
Yes. And so in the future, is there any movie that you're burning to make that you haven't made yet? You've made 2 Hulk movies, so maybe a third one. Or, yes.
Maybe the third time I'll get it right. There are so many, but the movie-going audience is changing, and interestingly enough, the statistics are that baby boomers are sort of the new demographic that people want to reach because we were trained. It's part of our culture to go to the movies. And teenagers now they spend more time at home interacting with their electronic devices, and to them, there are too many options, and movie going can be, just too much trouble. So.
And does gaming play into that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Were they? Yes, where you can do a couple different chase your own zombies. That's interesting.
But I'm, in fact, in the lobby. Today I got a phone call from someone who's helping me put the financing together for an independent film called Very Good Girls that I think we've got the financing for, which is an under $5 million movie, written and directed by Naomi Foner, who was Oscar nominated for Running on Empty and wrote Losing Isaiah and Dangerous Beauty. It stars Dakota Fanning, Lizzie Olsen, Anton Yelchin, Dustin Hoffman, Peter Sarsgaard, Sissy Spacek.
Wow.
And it's taken over 2 years to get the financing together for a coming-of-age drama about two girls who decide after their senior year in high school they're going to lose their virginity before they go off to college and fall in love with the same boy. So you'd think that would be a really commercial concept, but it's even with that cast, it's taken over 2 years to put the financing together.
Is it because of the economic times that we're in, or?
You know, it still costs as much money to market a small film than it does a large film. And, you know, and in fact, every year it goes up. And I'm hoping that, Like Crazy, which Anton Yelchin is in, just opened. It opened really, really well. Lizzie's movie, which is the 3M movie, Margaret Macy May, is also doing incredibly well. So I'm hopeful that now there's an opportunity to make movies that are relevant to teenagers, that are smart and interesting movies.
And one more quick question. We're going to turn it to you in a moment to do some Q&A from you directly. I'm intrigued what you're saying about the baby boomers, and since you know these marketing numbers, what about those like the expensive movie theaters that are like $20 a ticket, and you can have a filet mignon and like
they're 20. I thought there were more than that.
Yeah, I think there are more. They're like 30 or whatever they. Yes, because I tried to go and see a movie with my girls the other day. We were just trying to, and we were stuck, and I go, I'm not going to pay $1,000 so they can eat steak, which they're not going to eat. Are those doing pretty well? Those kind of movie houses, that different kind of.
I think it depends on the market. Obviously, Pasadena must be pretty upscale because we've got not only we've got the Gold Class and we have the ArcLight.
Yeah.
So they must think we've got money to burn.
Yeah, yeah. Do you like going and seeing movies in that kind of environment?
I really like going to see movies where the projection is good. And you can hear the sound.
So what? So where's that? You're big on the sound.
And
big
you know
on
what?
the sound.
And my daughter goes to the dollar cinemas.
Right.
She loves the idea that you can see a double feature for $2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But is there any kind of movie theater? Any particular one you like?
I'll go see a movie anywhere where the sound and the projection are good.
Right.
And that they have really tasty popcorn.
Okay. And are you a butter and salt kind of?
Well, I used to be. I'm not a salt person, but butter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Real
okay.
butter.
Real butter. Okay. Good to know. All right. So this is an opening of, and we are going to turn it. If you would take some questions from the audience,
sure.
If you are ready to do that. So, and this is for you. Now I don't know how we're going to do this. Do we pass a mic?
So I will hold on to the mic. Just wait until I get to you so that we can get your voice on the recording.
Yes.
And I do have to make one other shout out to Yvonne Russo because we've worked together on a documentary, and because we haven't talked about documentaries, and
yes.
we worked together on True Whispers, which is the true story of the Navajo Code Talkers, and which aired on PBS, and there's a second documentary that I did with a colleague of both of ours, Valerie Redhorse, on the Choctaw, who served as code talkers in World War I.
Well, that's really extraordinary. And of course, documentaries where you started.
Yeah, I mean, and at Stanford, I finally proved my worth when I made documentaries.
Yeah. Is there another documentary you're interested in? Are you that are you thinking about? Some other.
Nothing right now.
Right,
Yeah.
but those are interesting. All right, so.
Hi, I'm just curious to hear what your opinion is on 3D movies, whether or not they're going to continue or they're a bad trend or a good trend.
That's really interesting. Obviously, my ex-husband, Jim Cameron, has staked a very big bet on that, and he's engineered camera systems and technology to make 3D films even better. I think he's one of the rare filmmakers who creates a film like Avatar that's an immersive experience that works perfectly in 3D. Technically, it's a much different way of making films, and many of the films that I've seen, the filmmakers weren't wired to make the best use of 3D. I think some of the Pixar films in 3D are tremendous. I think using it as just a technique to inflate box office hasn't been working recently, and the statistics now for a lot of 3D films, they're making more in 2D houses than in 2D screens than 3D because people don't want to pay extra. That's not true yet in Europe and Asia. There's still a much higher demand for movies in 3D in Europe and Asia. So, I don't know if it's a cultural thing. I don't know if their price points there are any different. But here, it hasn't caught on the way that everyone was predicting.
Yes, I was forced
I don't know that I answered your question. Okay.
We saw Yogi Bear in 3D, and that was a picnic basket flies out of the screen. That's all that we paid $16 for. So there's a reason some of these aren't doing that well.
Last year I saw a film done by Danny DeVito, and it was kind of experimental. He put it out on YouTube. Girl walks into a bar, and I guess it was sort of meant to be a proof of how you could get a full feature film out into YouTube and make it accessible to everyone. What are your feelings about that?
Well, YouTube just announced that they've created a number of channels, and they've given a number of filmmakers and producers, I don't know if it's $4 or $5 million to create content for those channels. So they look at themselves now as an alternative to film and television. And I think that in the future, there really won't be a distinction. You'll be able to access content, and whether it was made for YouTube or for the cinema or for television. Already, I think young children aren't making that distinction anymore. They consume content by downloading it, and I think there's less brand consciousness. In other words, I'm going to watch CBS's programming tonight, the way that some of us did. They just look at it as, I want to watch this show. They may not even be aware of what channel or network it's on. So the problem is going to be, how hard is it already if you get cable channels and you've got 500 of them to figure out what you're going to watch? Now, if you think about, there may be, over 5,000 channels. The difficulty is going to be trying to market a particular project so that people are even aware it's out there. The nice thing is that you don't have to do appointment television. The DVR figures are continuing to go up. I know because I have learned now that I have a TV series, DVR is bad. I didn't realize that. I thought DVR was really good because then I didn't have to be home to watch something. But the truth is that the ad dollars are not calculated at the same rate because people, of course none of you, fast forward through those darn pesky ads. Of course, I don't do that to get to the program that you really want to watch. So as a result of that, the networks, whether they're cable or broadcast, have to value DVR'd ratings lower.
You mentioned earlier that you pay attention to your Twitter timeline. Do do you read the fan blogs and the websites and the
Yeah.
forums and that kind of thing? And how does that influence, if at all, your work?
A lot of times it really depresses me. But, it's sort of like a car crash. You can't look away.
And why does it depress you?
Because people say really nasty things, and sometimes they say really nasty personal things. On the other hand, and with a film or with a television series, it's really tough. The good news is you can't really respond to the feedback because we're getting feedback for the first, second, and third episodes that we shot of The Walking Dead. We're now shooting the 12th episode. We can't take that feedback and really incorporate it. The fans somehow don't realize that. So they get really upset that we haven't fixed the broken things. So that's why I read it because it's important to know maybe for next season. If there's a continuing thread, it's good to sort of put it in the hopper with everything else. But what I like is that most of the feedback has been we really like the character stories. We really like, we love the zombies, but we're coming back to the show because we're interested in the human characters. And then when I read the ones that basically say, I'm completely uninterested in the human characters in this show, why can't you just kill more zombies? We killed a lot of zombies recently. So hopefully they're happy.
I just wanted to say that Ellen Ripley is by far my favorite character in any movie ever. But I want to ask you, being in the entertainment industry, how did you find a work-life balance?
It's to me, it was not really possible. On the other hand, I'm one of those people who probably would have filled that time anyway with volunteer work or something. And I remember when the guilt got to the point where I sat down with my daughter and I said, look, I know I haven't been home as much as a lot of your friends' parents. So if you want me to, I'll quit. I'll stop work for a while. And she looked at me like I was an alien and said, but she calls me Mamo, but Mamo, this is the relationship we've always had. Is there something wrong? She took it, have I done something wrong? Do you need to stay home because I'm doing something wrong? And it was very interesting to hear her feedback and her perspective, but at the same time, I don't get over the guilt. I traveled a lot back and forth, regardless of where I was, to be home, but I was never home as much as, as a lot of my friends who aren't in the entertainment business. So I was never able, I don't think I was ever able to get it right. And it's a huge sacrifice, and I think it's why, there aren't, why a lot of women who have children take executive jobs, because they don't have to travel as much and they can work more regular hours.
I'm just curious how old your daughter was when you had this conversation.
You know what? I think she was. We had it a few times actually. I think the first time she was probably about 7 or 8, and then we had it again when she was 12. And I have to say, I was completely freaked out. I think Cheryl knows this, and I think Julie, who's here, knows this. I saw the movie 13. I don't know if you, Catherine Hardwicke's movie. I literally drove home from that movie. I saw it late. I pulled my daughter out of bed. I know she wasn't 13 yet, and I made her promise me. This is pathetic, but I guess it shows you how entertainment can really influence you. And I said, who are your friends? You know, you have to tell me who your friends are. I want to know your friends. I want to know their parents. And because I realized as, parents become less important to children when they hit 12 and 13. And it really is all about their peer group and who they're hanging out with. And even though that was maybe an extreme example, that really can happen. And so that movie terrified me. And my daughter can tell you because I made her promise me things that she quoted to me because she doesn't forget anything. Years later, I made her make a lot of promises of things she wouldn't do until she was 18. And then when she turned 18, she said, okay, so now I can do this, 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 and this. No, let's renegotiate. Maybe when you're 25.
Well, my older daughter is 11, so now you've really freaked me out. Thank you.
Go see
Yeah.
Catherine Hardwicke's 13.
Yeah, great. She's 11, and I cannot.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you both for being here. It's just a joy listening to you. And I wanted to say that I'm an actor and a writer, and I did group ADR on the pilot episode of The Walking Dead.
Thank you.
And it was so much fun because we spent almost an 8-hour day trying to figure out what zombies sound like.
We love how you sound.
Thank you. It was really, really fun. My question to you is because you come from a documentary background. I know that for myself, even though I should be watching network shows all the time, I try to watch them at least, once or twice a season just so I know. But I find myself gravitating towards certain reality shows. Like I love True TV. I just love Forensics Files and all those kinds of shows about murders. And I also love shows like All on the Line, which is, about designers given this opportunity or whatever, because I'm fascinated by human behavior and how some people trip themselves up. And from your background as a documentarian and knowing that half of the pull is towards reality shows, obviously the audience is fascinated by human behavior. And I contrast that with the narrative. And I'm wondering if there's going to come a time, when, it doesn't all have to, but there's going to come a time when the two merge more.
It's really interesting because I was at a meeting recently where people said the future of entertainment may be pretty instantaneous, where, audience members will be able to choose an ending. They'll be able to sit in their seats and, push buttons to determine where a plot's going to take them. So it really does can put the viewer in the driver's seat. I guess my issue is with, if something blurs the line when it really has been scripted, a show has been scripted by a producer or, a creator, and people think it's real, and it's not. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. But the idea that, people like, Lawrence Fishburne's daughter thinks it's a good idea to do a sex tape to become an actor because because somehow that worked for Paris Hilton, who, by the way, I don't think of as an actress, or Kim Kardashian or someone, that's who people want to emulate, that makes me a little nervous also.
There's one more question there. I think we have time for maybe one more question.
Greetings, Gale. It's an honor to be here this evening. I've followed your career since the early 80s, and it's been nice to hear you speak and share your thoughts. I'm just curious, with you shared earlier how many hats a producer wears, and throughout the years you've had quite a career. What is the juice that you get out of producing? What's the one thing more than anything else that you love about it that keeps you going and do such sacrifices, putting aside such a personal life for a professional one?
I love being on set. Because it is a surrogate family. I love to be able to take care of the cast and the crew, help the directors, help everyone on set do their best possible work, and to be able to facilitate that. You know, at the end of the day, know that everyone showed up and everyone contributed everything that they could. You know, and honestly, The Walking Dead has probably been the best experience of my career, because the shooting schedule is long. The cast really gets, you know, now that we're in our second season, we've just been picked up for a third season. They really bonded together like nothing I've ever seen before. And it becomes something that is bigger than a director who comes in or a new cast member who comes in. It's funny because you'll get maybe a cast member who will come in who will have some sort of attitude, and they kind of think that that's kind of cool. And the show changes them. And they realize that everyone is there to do the work. It's not just, you know, it's not just this zombie series, you know, that no one takes seriously. Our cast takes it completely seriously. Our crew takes it completely seriously. And, you know, and that's so gratifying. You know, we have the wrap party this weekend. I'm flying back on Friday. And, you know, and I know that everyone will be crying. They'll be crying that even though they've worked in 99-degree heat and 90% humidity all summer with ticks and chiggers and mosquitoes, that they all felt that it was an amazing experience and they want to come back and do it again. And we don't get that many opportunities to do that. And, you know, a lot of what we do, you know, you're by yourself, you know, in an office. You know, but to be part of a community like that is wonderful and rare and really special to me. And by the way, I was supervising ADR with the actors today. That's what I was doing this afternoon. So now I feel guilty that I wasn't there with group.
All right, I think that's about what time we have. And just if you could just join me in giving a great hand to our Trailblazer.
You know,
but
what I really want to say is,
yes,
we're here really to honor women at work, and an organization that, you know, 6,000 people rely on every year, and especially in times like this. What I do is a privilege and an honor and very fun to do. What they do is so significant and so important, and you know, and I hope that everyone here will not only embrace what they do, but spread the word, so they can, you know, continue to do it and do it with greater, you know, donations and you know, and impact people's lives in a meaningful way. So thank you.
Women at Work, I'd like to thank you all very, very, very much for being here this evening. I'd like to especially thank Sandra for the excellent interview. And of course, Gale, our Trailblazer Award winner, thank you very, very, very much. In the world of advertising and marketing, I've been asked to say that we do have a drawing, and if you haven't given us your card, give us a card, and we'll be doing the drawing later this evening. And once again, thank you both very much.